So I'm Harry Robinson. I report to HICA, and one of my jobs is actually to bring in speakers, and it's one of the best parts of my job. James Bach's work has actually affected the industry and has affected my work as a tester for about a decade, because I don't know if James remembers, but we first met at Quality Week back in 1995, and the first thing we did was argue for 2 hours. And it was a magical moment for me. And it showed me kind of what it really meant to be a tester. And to be a tester doesn't mean you actually have to agree with everybody. So one of the things James is currently advocating for testers, because there is so little that's actually available that's currently state of the art, is how testers should actually go about making themselves experts in their field. And so with that, James.
Thank you, Harry. This is a very bold and arrogant titled talk, Becoming a Software Testing Expert, because after all, who could possibly give this talk except someone who seems to consider himself a software testing expert? Well, I do consider myself a software testing expert, and partly for reasons that you probably don't know about yet, because you may or may not, but probably not. You probably don't go to all the testing conferences and talk and argue with people who write testing textbooks, so you don't know the secrets of how do you get to be a software testing expert? How do you get to be considered a software testing expert? I'm going to spill them all for you here. I'm going to tell you how it really goes down, how it works. First thing you need to know is there's absolutely no authority in the world that says who a software testing expert is. Phew. Okay? Don't worry about that. There's no authority. You know, when I published my book, Lessons Learned in Software Testing, nobody checked to see if I was, or any of my co-authors, whether we knew what we were doing. They just published it. So now I'm a published author in software testing. And it was remarkably easy. And it makes sense now to me as I look at most software testing textbooks on the market, and I see that they are, in my opinion, completely worthless or almost completely worthless. I go, oh, now I understand why. Anybody can write one of these things, and then they can go to a conference and say, I'm a testing expert. So look, I'm a special kind of testing expert. I'm the kind, the kind that invites you to be skeptical about my status as a software testing expert. Be skeptical. Now, if you Google me, you'll find lots of hits associated with my name in software testing. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean a lot. There's a bunch of other people who also get a lot of hits. But at least Google seems to think that the Google magical supermind system, the all-knowing global supermind, it attaches me to software testing on a regular basis, so that's kind of cool. And maybe increasingly, as we go into the future, Google will be the arbiter of these things. That's my prediction. Everyone will just get Googled. That's like, you're up for Supreme Court justice? Well, let's Google you first here. That'll be more important than the ABA designation of your qualifications. I want to invite you to take a challenge, an expert tester challenge. I'm going to put up a few problems here. I'm not going to give you the answers to these problems. I'm happy to talk with you offline about the answers to these problems. But I want you to know the kinds of problems that I am expected by my clients to answer for them lickety-split, off the top of my head. Okay? I've got to sound smart while doing it. I've got to sound educated. I've got to be aware of what my competitors are thinking in these arenas. Okay? Take any of these claims. Let's say it's important that testing be repeatable. Analyze that. Now, what happens? What happens in your mind? What happens in your heart when someone says, analyze? It's important that testing be repeatable. Do you have anxiety? Do you wonder, what kind of analysis? I mean, it's so vague. What happens in me is excitement. I have so much to say about this. I can talk about what they say at the conferences. I can talk about what they say in the books. I've got lots and lots of stuff to say about it. And I can write a whole report on any one of these, just analyzing it from different points of view, various kinds of analysis. Okay? I suggest to you that if you want to have a public reputation or a reputation in any community as a fabulous tester, among other things, knowing how to talk about statements like these, how to look at the pros and cons, how to question the meaning of each word in the statement, and relate that back to testing methodology. And not only your testing methodology, but the testing methodologies of the world throughout history. That ability to do that and to smile while you're doing it is a big part of what it means to be a testing expert. Now, I'm going to share with you what I think of as the non-obvious secrets of becoming a testing expert, okay? Not the obvious ones. I mean, obviously, you should do testing. Have experience as a tester, that helps. Read some testing books once in a while, that helps. It helps even if they're worthless, because they are worth something. Even the worthless testing textbooks have one value, and that is you can say you know what that author says about testing, and that is if you're a testing expert, as opposed to someone who just does testing really well, you've got to be able to comment on what the other thinkers are saying about testing. So, I mean, they're the obvious things that if you just sit for 2 minutes and think, what is it? How do you be a testing expert? Well, obviously, you get a degree in software testing, and then you get your master's in software testing and your PhD in software testing, which, by the way, none of those things exist. And you read a lot of research papers, and then you have to write articles, and you have to speak at conferences, and you have to do lots of testing over a period of many years. Okay, those are all the kind of the obvious things. I'm not going to dwell on those very much, except I want to point out that some of that is wrong. Actually, it may take less experience than you think to become a testing expert. It may take less reading than you think, and it may take different reading than you think. But you do have to struggle with stuff like this. How about this? Here's a simple problem. You're using a calculator. You press these keys. What is the expected result? Can you answer this? I'm not going to tell you what the answer is. In fact, if you're looking at this in the Google space of Google Video, stop the video. Try to answer this before you see my next couple of slides. Quick, stop it. No, too late. How about this? 2 events overlap. What are the test cases? I need to test the risk that if these 2 potentially overlapping events do or do not overlap, that there will be some kind of terrible thing that happens. How do I analyze the combinatorics of that? How do I frame the problem? What do you do when somebody throws a problem like this at you if you're a testing expert? Okay? These are the kinds of things I've got to be able to do and look smart doing it. How about this? These are real common. Quick, what is boundary testing and how is it done? It's one of the most basic test techniques, boundary testing. And yet, I was at a conference recently where we tried to do a task analysis on boundary testing, to rethink boundary testing. And what we found when we applied task analysis methodology from education theory to boundary testing is we found out there's a lot to boundary testing that none of us present had ever quite put into words. And I realized that I had an entire day of material for teaching boundary testing that I didn't even know I had until I really thought about this and analyzed the task of boundary testing consciously, on purpose. In most testing textbooks, you see boundary testing horribly trivialized and oversimplified. I promise you, it's a rich and interesting idea to do boundary testing. I'll just give you one hint. How do you know what a boundary is? How do you test boundaries that are invisible? Boundary testing, if you're going to be super fantastic at it, you have to be able to test invisible boundaries that no one identifies, that nobody knows about, that emerge from the interactions of complex systems. Gee, how do you do that? Fascinating problem. And what do you find in the textbooks? Here's what you find in the textbooks. Step 1, ask the developer what the boundaries are. The step 2 that they don't tell you about is step 2, believe whatever you're told. It's implied. And what I do, because I'm a professional tester in my own idiom, is, did my system just go down here? No, it's back up again. All right. You never know what's going to go wrong. I'm a tester. I'm ready for anything. I'm like Inspector Clouseau in those Pink Panther movies. I instruct all my colleagues to attack me randomly. Speaking of that, I encourage any of you to ask a question or make a comment at any time. I'll repeat it into the microphone here, or if you're close enough, then you will, I'll give you the microphone, okay? And you can challenge anything that I'm saying. That's how I become an excellent tester in my own way of thinking about it, is I associate myself with the most challenging minds. I make rash statements, and then I sit next to Simon Field, and he says, well, you have to think about it in a number of ways, and I get smarter.